Okay. So, which theater of combat did you prefer? The Europe or Pacific?
I preferred the European theater of war,
Did you think one was more?
which was Europe,
Uh-huh.
which included Germany all the way over to Russia.
Did you find that that was more important than the Pacific?
I would say it was more important because the Germans had a big army, a big air force, and they were something to contend with.
Mm-hmm. And did you have any hatred towards the Japanese or towards the Germans? I mean, you saw obviously the German troops more so than the Japanese.
No, the only thing is that we fought as a crew, and we didn't. We were in Europe. It didn't make any difference if they were Germans or Japanese.
Okay. So now tell us about your combat experiences. What actions did you see? What missions did you fly?
Well, I flew 50 missions, and most of them were, I would say, between 24,000 and 29,000 feet high. I think the worst ones were the oil fields in Ploesti, which was about 7.5 hours in the air. And then in Ploesti, they had 300 and something, maybe 350 anti-aircraft guns. And it's like flying into a big cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the German 88s exploded, you got shrapnel all over your airplane if it hit close enough. And many times we came back with 101 holes. They were small, but the shrapnel came through our airplane.
Okay, what was your job on the airplane?
My job was, well, some call it the belly gunner. So my job was, I'd go in there, and just as we get over the Adriatic Sea, you get into your turret, you fire your guns to make sure they're working, and you sit there for the next 5 or 6 hours, and you're protecting the bottom section. If the Germans are coming up from underneath, it's up to the belly gunners and the waist gunners to make sure that you see those airplanes coming up,
Mm-hmm.
and you fire.
So now tell us about your most dangerous mission. Which one did you feel was your most dangerous?
Well, I feel that the most dangerous mission was when we went to Linz, Austria, and the German 88 blew a 5 foot by 6 foot hole in the right side of the plane, and in my turret I could lift it up, and I saw the big hole in the wing, and the airplane started to tip. We thought we were going to have to bail out, but the gas tank was empty. And then, of course, those tanks, they seal themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the worst one, because the pilot pressed a button, get ready to bail out, and then he changed his mind. He says, no, we can make it. So I think that was the worst experience we had.
So were you in position when that happened? Were you in the belly?
I was in the belly, underneath the airplane, which is a bad place to be, because nobody wanted to fly in the belly, because if your hydraulics went out and you came back and you can't get out of your turret, you hit the runway and you're dead as a doornail.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened many times to somebody else, not me. But many times, if they couldn't get their landing gear down, and you're stuck in that ball turret, oh boy, you're all done.
How would you have bailed out if you had to from the belly of the gun? I mean, does it just open up and you kind of fall
Well,
out?
in where I was, since I was so, I think I weighed 125, 130 pounds. You have a safety belt, and then you have two clips up on top. Well, I never used the safety belt because I figured if I had to bail out, that's all I had to do is flip the two clips, the door would push against the turret, the door would open, and I could just fall right out.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that with the whole 50 missions, and not only that, I was the only one that was small enough. I put a chest chute on instead of a back chute, so I had a chest chute. So if I had to bail out right away, because most of the time, once the airplane goes up and starts going on its back, pretty near everybody is lost. There's no way, once it goes up and starts spinning, you can't bail out. It holds you right inside there.
Uh-huh. And did you ever refuse to obey an order from a higher official?
Never, never. Wherever we were told to fly, that's where we flew. Even though we didn't like one of our colonels, but eventually he got shot down.
Mm-hmm.
He would go over a target if it was a little cloudy, and instead of coming back and bombing some other alternate target, he would keep circling and circling and circling. And eventually, it got the best of him because he got shot down.
Did you ever see any of the German troops during your combat missions?
During the combat missions, we never saw any of the troops because we were at an air base. Actually, it was a big farmer's field with metal plates. And we had nothing to do with the troops themselves. The only ones that we would see is the German fighter pilots.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever see any prisoners of war?
Yes. On the way over in Africa, after the British and the U.S. started going up into Africa, they had maybe 1,000 or 2,000 prisoners, mostly Italian and Germans. And then as you're going in, as we were going in toward Italy, across Africa and Tunisia, from hundreds and hundreds of miles, that's all you saw was broken tanks, armored vehicles, all on the side of the road. They were all shot up, and nobody, you couldn't use them.
Did the people from Italy, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, how'd they treat you if you had any contact with them? Did you ever talk with the prisoners?
We didn't talk with the prisoners, but at our airfield we had an elderly gentleman that took care of our tent, and if my mother or my sister sent me some canned goods or something for cleaning our tent, and he was real good. He'd bring spaghetti, and I didn't eat spaghetti, but he'd bring spaghetti and everything. And he was maybe 15 miles away from the airfield, but he came every day, cleaned the tent, made sure everything was all set. Most of the people were good. And then they had an opera house in Foggia, and I went to the opera, and it was wonderful. Oh, big, enormous place, and the music was terrific.
Yeah. Did you ever write letters to anyone back home, or did you receive any letters?
I had about 3 or 4 girlfriends, and of course, my sister would write to me pretty every other day, and we had a system that if I went on a mission to Munich, the following day in the Stars and Stripes, they would have an article, 15th Air Force attacks Munich. I would cut out that clip and I'd tell her, every time I send her one of those clips, I was on that particular mission. And she liked that. I've got some of those clips over here.
Okay. How would you sum up the efforts of the Allied troops in World War II?
Well, I tell you, the Allied troops, I didn't see many of the ground soldiers or infantry. But as far as the Air Forcemen, they were, whenever you wanted something done, they'd work all night to fix your airplane, to get it going for the next mission. They were really terrific.
How long did you serve?
2 years, 7 months, and 3 days. That's because you could fly every day or every other day, or if you, I got sick for a month, and so I was grounded for a month. And so the only way I could get back, and come to find out, my tail gunner was a chain smoker. And the smoke would go and I couldn't stand smoke. Oh my God. And then, so what I had to do, as soon as I got to the airplane, I had to take my oxygen bottle, the one you carry, and I put the oxygen on. After that, I was all right. Because that fresh oxygen was really something.
So you said that you were drafted into it.
I was drafted in the service in February of '43.
And you were fine going into war? You thought it was the right thing to do?
Oh, it certainly was. Even though a lot of people didn't care for it, but I liked to fly. And I wanted to be a waist gunner, but you know, the big boys, they couldn't get in the turret, so I was chosen to go into the ball turret.
So how many men were in your crew?
10 men.
Do you still keep in touch with any of them, or any of them still
They're
around?
they're all deceased. As a matter of fact, my waist gunner came from Snyder, Oklahoma, and I talked to his wife about maybe 6 months ago. He stayed in the service as a waist gunner, and then after the war ended, he went to helicopter school, and then he fought in the next 2 wars, and he ended up as a colonel in the helicopters. And then he got sick, and then 8 years ago he passed away. And he had an odd name, J.W. Reeser. And every time he'd go to do something or sign something, everybody would say, put your real name down. That's the way his father put it, J.W. Reeser. That's all he had as a name. And but he had a pilot's license, you know, the small airplanes. So we asked him, he tried to get into pilot school, but they were all filled up. So he took a waist gunner's job. And I had, my tail gunner came from Arkansas. My bombardier came from Wisconsin. My pilot came from Ohio. And my co-pilot, he came from Macon, Georgia. And then our navigator, I think he came from Iowa, but he was good. On the way overseas, we were supposed to stop in Puerto Rico with a new airplane. We took a B-24 from New York all the way, and we got to Puerto Rico, and I don't know, for some reason or other, the pilot says, well, we can make it to Trinidad. Well, that was a bad mistake. So we were flying close to the ocean. I don't know how many feet we were, but anyway, the navigator his name was Smith, and he took a different route to get to Trinidad. We come over a mountain, and just as we hit the runway in Trinidad, we ran out of gas. Unbelievable. And we coasted to the end, and of course they filled us up with gas, and then we took on from there. We went to Brazil, and then from Brazil we went over to Africa, and then from Africa we went to Italy. So it was a long ride. As a matter of fact, in Trinidad, I got a bunch of bananas off the tree, and we says, oh, we're going to have bananas all the way to Africa. What we didn't know, we put the bananas in there, and then as we were flying a little higher, the bananas froze. They all turned black.
Oh wow.
And so we had to throw them out. We couldn't use them. But when we cut them off the tree, a whole big group of bananas like this. It was terrific.
So, did you live here in Massachusetts at the time?
Yes, I did.
Where was basic training? Where'd you have to go?
Basic training, we went from Fort Devens to Florida. And we stayed in Florida, I think it was 6 weeks in Florida. And they told you what you were going to go through. Of course, there was a lot of marching, especially in Florida. It was so hot, and every day you'd go to a parade, or you go to this, or you go to this, and so, because I remember I didn't have my shoes polished one day. This big sergeant come over and says to me, you didn't polish your shoes. So I bent down to take the dust off. So he made me walk around the hotel for 6 hours because my shoes weren't polished. So I didn't like that. But nothing you could do, you had to do it.
Right.
And the food, I was very fussy on the food. And if you go into an area where you had to eat whatever they give you, and you know, when you're in a chow line, the people there, whatever, if you didn't like it, you know, they're in such a hurry, boom, boom, boom. They put all this food on it, and a lieutenant would go around to make sure you ate everything. So you should see the tricks they had. If you had a big jacket on, you were stuffing it in your pockets. You know, anything gooey you wouldn't put in. But if you had peas, carrots, or whatever you didn't like, and nobody wanted it next to you, you'd try to hide it in your pockets and later on throw it away. But you couldn't waste any food.
Well, thank you very much for.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad you came. And then this is what we took over from New York, a B-24. And then there's the P-47, P-39, there's the P-51. And we had a squadron of P-38s also. And there's my turret. See, you're in this ball, the door is open on this one. See, and you got 250 caliber machine guns there. These are all the missions that you're on. And this is part of my crew. Here's some of my girlfriends. And oh, these. I didn't drink, but they gave me coupons for whiskey, and I went in the store. I got all these for the boys, and they enjoyed it. And then these are what I used to send my sister. Anytime I was on one of those missions, I'd send her one of these. '99 bomb group. This was in Arizona, the cactus. Invaders push in from the beach. That's the well, I got my name in the paper anyway, and we came home, and my brother was here, and I was here, and two of my gunners were here. And these are some of my bombing targets. Here's an airfield. See, they hit all the buildings and everything. And this one is broad Yugoslavia. Must have been hitting the bridge in Yugoslavia. That's 24,000 feet. And this is Germany again. This is Genoa, Italy, the subpens. All the submarines were in these slots. And you can see some of the bombs going down. Yeah, they give you this when you leave, all the places, what kind of medals you received. This is the airfield in Kingman, Arizona. At that time, there was only 3 buildings over there. There was an airfield. We had open cockpit airplanes with a machine gun, and they pull a target, and you got to hit the target. And then they give you your flying time. That's